Remember the night you said I love you. Remember you vowed by all the stars above.
Love of white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the treetops glisten and children listen to hear.
On Christmas Day, Beryl and I usually have a few people round for the midday meal. It's only once a year, and we like to go to a certain amount of trouble. Beryl could go on cooking till the cows come home, and she always says she doesn't mind how much she cooks so long as people eat it up. Waste not, want not, as they say in the classics. Anyway, this year she went crazy. My wife is known for her puff pastry. In fact, she's notorious for it. I think if Beryl ever had anything on a tombstone, it'd just say Beryl Stone, known for her puff pastry. Well, she turned out a batch of 6 little mince pies and one big one to keep her hand in. She always likes to get her pudding over and done with early in the piece too, ever since the year she fell in. Of course, I do my bit, boiling the sixpences, but my main department is the tree and the decorations, etc. I always get the tree from Bob May. A very nice type of chappie, a returned man. Once a year, he runs his conveyance up to the Dandenongs, to one of those new reforestation plantations in the vicinity of the Sylvan Dam. At night. Well, I don't ask any questions. I just say, thanks very much, I'll leave it at that. Mind you, if I'd known where he got them, it'd be an entirely different matter altogether. Well, by the time I'd finished with it, the tree looked like fairyland, and I put a few extra bricks in the jardiniere to keep it firm so it wouldn't tilt and the cotton wool wouldn't fall off. We kept the Venetians well closed too, so the blessed thing wouldn't droop all over the shop before the big day. Pine needles. They play merry hell with my wife's appliance. Our dining room table is very deceptive. In fact, all our furniture is deceptive. Very deceptive. But it seats quite a fair compliment with the leaf in. So we invited Mr. and Mrs. Simpson, Clive and Valda Clissold, the Clissold couple, and the Nettletons with their 2 delightful kiddies, Wayne and Marilyn, making 8, counting Beryl and my good self. Beryl said the nippers could sit at the bridge table and have their own little Christmas dinner. Well, on Christmas morning, it looked as though it was going to be a scorcher. So Beryl got up early to pit the dates and do the stuffing before it got too hot to do a hand's turn. And I potted round the garden, giving a few shrubs a drink before the neighbours could wake up and dob me in. I then toddled off to communion at Holy Trinity. And the Reverend Neil Polkinghorne, a very go-ahead young chappie, he told the menfolk they could take their coats off if they were so desirous of doing so. That's about all I can remember him saying. There must have been something about Jesus, but I dropped off, I suppose. Oh, he said he was sorry that there weren't more young people. That's right, more young people at the carols by candlelight service, but you can't expect youngsters to stay up half the night waiting for it to get dark enough for them to light the blessed candles. It isn't feasible. It just is not feasible. He also mentioned that he was sorry there weren't any bells this Christmas, but apparently the Louisa Hutchinson Memorial loudspeaker system is on the blink. A lovely service. Well, by the time I'd got home, Beryl had given the house a good going over with the fly tox, so we wouldn't have to race the blowies to our dinner. Unfortunately, the fly spray is also on the blink. The washer's gone on it. And Beryl has to hold it at a special angle so the blessed fly spray doesn't trickle down her wrist and get under her ring. The result is she's killed all the flies on the skirting board. Well, she'd set the table beautifully, though, with a cracker by each plate, and I noticed that she'd even looked out her precious Cries of London dinner mats. Sure sign of a special occasion in Beryl's book. Meanwhile, I nipped into the bedroom and I got into my Father Christmas costume again, tried it on. I was still having a dickens of a lot of strife with the beard. Beryl had made the beard herself, with pipe cleaners and cotton wool, stitched onto one of her old surgical stockings. And the blessed thing kept coming off one of my ears and gapping at the side. Somehow it didn't look real. Beryl said that kiddies these days notice things like that. In fact, she said they're on the lookout for them. She said when the time came, she'd do something with a Band-Aid. Well, people started arriving before we knew where we were. So I handed round the mince pies and a drop of sherry for those who partook. We didn't go to the trouble this year of serving the sherry with an olive on a toothpick because, well, it isn't everyone's cup of tea. Beryl said she's found the vast majority are just as happy with a pickled onion. Val de Clissold said that she liked sherry. She liked sherry, but sherry didn't like her. And I must say she was looking very peaky, and Beryl said later she thought her whites were very discoloured. Apparently she'd been a bit car sick again on the way home. Well, she's always had that trouble, and they've tried everything. Buicks, Chevrolets, Oldsmobiles, Pontiacs and Hudsons. But Clive was still very pushed getting her to the nature strip in time. Suddenly the door chimes went. I dashed to the door, I had a peep, and it was Alan and Elaine Hotchkiss popping in unexpectedly and with presents, but forewarned as forearmed, and Beryl nipped into the bedroom and she wrapped up some Yardley's talcum powder, some Potron Moore's bath salts, and a lovely big cake of Mornay French fern soap on a rope too. So the Hotchkisses would never have noticed. Oh, but they're a lovely couple, and Alan is a delightful man. A returned man. He's a sporting identity in Glen Iris. Actually, Alan is the pro at the Yarradale Golf Club. And he told me, by the by, that he'd latterly been placed in an exceptionally embarrassing position. Apparently, so Alan told me, he'd been down at the junction about 2.5 weeks ago, and he'd bumped it. More like 3 weeks ago. 3. Could be more, could be 2.5. 3, give or take a day. It'd be a good. Now it could be a good 3.5 weeks. Would be the 4th, it was the Tuesday, Tuesday afternoon. It would be all of 3.5 weeks ago. It would be a good 3.5 weeks ago. Anyway, it doesn't matter, it has no bearing. It has no bearing on the story at all, but just to be on the safe side, to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, let's just say that at one stage of the game, Alan was down at the junction and I'm not even sure it was the junction. It was at the shops. I think it was at those little shops in Cotham Road. No. It was Hartwell. What's Hartwell? No, it wasn't. Look, just to be on the safe side, let's just say that once upon a time, Alan Hotchkiss was somewhere. Actually, in point of established fact, I think all this happened about 20 years ago. Anyway, the point of it all is that he bumped into Dave Cohen. I know that for certain. Old Dave Cohen, who owns Miss Greta Gowns of Camberwell, Caulfield and Clayton. And Coey asked Alan if he could pull a few strings and get him into the golf club. Oh dear. Dearie, dearie me. Well, of course, we've known the Cohens for donkey's years. I can remember when they came to Australia just before the war, without a razoo to their names. They could hardly speak the King's English, not that they tried that hard. He's a very fair chappie, but Beryl said looking at her you could pick it. Not that I hold that against them. Heavens alive, Australia's a free country. And what's the old saying? You shake your family tree, one's bound to fall out. No gainsaying, they have produced, some wonderful people, a few wonderful people. Scientists, musicians, giving money to hospitals, that type of thing. Still, he put Alan in a beggar of a position. I mean, as Alan said to me later, he said, you let one in, you've got to let them all in. Before you know where you are, they're running the whole blessed show. I personally, look, I'd have no objection whatsoever if they started up their own golf club. It's not that they're that short, and as Beryl said to me the other day, and it's so true, have you ever seen a poor one? Well, Alan wriggled out of it somehow, but he said to me that type of thing. Oh, it always happens when you get too pally. Give them an inch and they take a mile. Well, when the Hotchkiss couple had vamoosed, Beryl said, dinner's ready when you are. So I turned on the fairy lights. To cut a long story short, they fused everything in the place, including the new eye-level roast master. So by the time I'd fiddled round with the fuse box, we didn't sit down till about 4:30. Turkey was as tough as old Nick. On top of that, I couldn't get the pudding to light. And when it finally did, the plastic holly melted, giving it a funny taste. Vi Simpson said it was luscious all the same, and it was the thought that counted. I noticed, by the by, that Beryl had given Vi an extra large second helping of potatoes and dicky bird, even though she'd said she'd had an elegant sufficiency. And Beryl later told me she'd only done it because on the odd occasion we've eaten there, Vi's been a bit of an Ikey Mo. Well, on top of the pudding, Beryl had made a lovely fruit salad, which she'd put in a cut crystal bowl she keeps for best. Oh, she's had that bowl for donkey's years, but it's still got the proud sticker on it. However, the kiddies had an elegant sufficiency. Everyone was full up to Dolly's wax. And I was completely stonkered. So the fruit salad was hardly touched. And Beryl said it was a crying shame after all the fags she'd gone to. Because with the exception of the banana, which goes brown overnight, Beryl had preserved every bit of that fruit herself in her Fowler's Vicola. And I can vouch for it personally because my wife has been bottling all her married life. Oh, though, the crackers. The crackers were a terrific disappointment. We got them all screwed up trying to make them go bang. There's not the workmanship in a cracker like there is. Clive Clissold said the trick is you unravel them and then you take the strip of cardboard out and you just pull that. Somehow it didn't seem the same. My joke was, Q, when is a door not a door? A, where's a jar? When it's a jar, which is terrifically funny because I got exactly the same joke last year. Beryl said she hadn't seen what joke the Nettleton couple got, but she thought it might have been a bit uncalled for. Well, Beryl passed round the homemade date and cashew fudge, a little bit of coconut ice, and I took the opportunity of nipping into the bedroom and getting into my Father Christmas costume again. And when I came out, I was the cynosure of all eyes. Should have seen Wayne and Marilyn. They thought I was just Christmas. Well, I gave out all the presents, and Beryl and I did very nicely too. Though Beryl said she thought that the talc that Vi Simpson had given her had been wrapped in exactly the same paper that she had wrapped Vi's present in last year. She said, in fact, she was going to put it to the test this year. She's going to mark the paper. She's going to put a little squiggle on it with one of those newfangled ballpoint biros that they're advertising in the paper at the moment. What a 9-day wonder they are. What a flash in the pan. I mean, they reckon you can write underwater with them. But what silly galoot would want to do a stupid thing like that? I suppose if you drowned yourself, you'd always leave a note of explanation. Beryl's now a member of the ladies section of the Glen Iris RSL and Citizens Bowling Club. So I gave her a lovely bowls box with 2 bowls, which the chappie at the sports depot said it could change because I wasn't sure of her bias. I actually have never been sure of Beryl's bias. It was a beautiful thing in polished Tasmanian hardwood. It was more a piece of furniture, really. In fact, the salesman said as much. He said, this isn't just a bowls box, it's also a piece of furniture. And it is. There's no 2 ways about that. It's a magnificent piece of furniture, though I'd be a bit perturbed if I came home one night and found Beryl sitting on it. She gave me, she spoilt me, as usual. Beryl gave me a beautiful box of initialed pyramid handkerchiefs, which were most acceptable. Unfortunately, there had been a bit of a run on my particular initial. Beryl was lucky enough to get the nearest one to her. She's quite right when she says I'm very hard to buy for. Well, Wayne and Marilyn had a very good innings at the bridge table. In fact, I told them, I said, you kiddies have had a good innings at the table, and they had. They'd had a magnificent innings. So we sent them out to the backyard with their toys. The little devils wanted to hop into their togs then and there and play under the sprinkler. But their mother put her foot down and said they weren't to go near the water till their dinner had settled. In 2.5 hours' time. Well, I handed round the hedgehog and the Turkish delight, and we all sat round the TV set, the new Astor 21-inch, and we watched the Queen's speech and the bushfire warnings. Then I thought it'd be a very good and a Christmassy idea if we all told a few old-fashioned ghost stories around the electric fan. But nobody knew any. No, Beryl said something very funny had once happened to her when she was a kiddie, but she couldn't remember what. Well, soon everyone had to be going, and as there was a big swag of perfectly good tucker going begging, Beryl typically made up a little parcel of leftovers for the Nettletons to drop off at the Louisa Hutchinson Memorial Home for Handicapped Kiddies on their way home. They'd only put it down in the drive for a couple of minutes to gather up the small fry, and Clive Clissold backed his Packard over the blessed lot. Still, what the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over, as they say in the classics. Well, Beryl likes to see people off. You know, she's old-fashioned. She likes to give everyone a send-off. She likes to stand on the nature strip with a hanky in the air, waving it in the general direction of receding vehicles. Sometimes she's out there for hours. I think she even forgets why she's there. She's just giving the whole neighbourhood a send-off. Passing motorists must be a bit puzzled to see this lady standing there, you know. They must think, oh, that's nice, but we didn't have lunch at her place. Oh, but Beryl was at the end of her tether, and I thought if she doesn't get a bit of shut-eye, she'll be a cot case on Boxing Day. I said to her, I said, Beryl, I said, if you don't get a bit of shut-eye, you're going to be a cot case on Boxing Day. And she was. Because I was at the end of my tether too, you know. But I potted around for a bit, picking up bits of tinsel off the carpet. But to tell you the truth, I felt like a wet rag. A very hot north wind had blown up, and I could hear people laughing way off over at the Jeffreys place. It rattled the Venetians and blew the majority of the cards off the mantelpiece, too. It's funny, we didn't get nearly as many cards back this year, and Beryl said it was the first time she could remember Barry and Shirley Bedgegood missing. Apparently they've had their fair share of bereavement latterly, but Beryl said things are never so bad you can't put pen to paper. You'd be amazed the number of people who sent us the same UNICEF card we sent them. Wouldn't you think people would have a bit more imagination? Well, when I finally got to bed and I switched off the bed lamp, I lay there in the dark for a bit, just listening to the Bakelite cooling down. Some nights it's more interesting than others. But lo and behold, Beryl started to talk in her sleep. I think it was the rich food and all the excitement, but she was chattering away like a wagon load of monkeys, yapping away and laughing and crying. Crying a bit. And, you know, I think she reckoned it was Christmas and she was a kiddie. I thought we'd have a good laugh about it next day, and I tried to remember a few bits and pieces so I could tease her, but when I woke up, I'd forgotten the blessed lot. Of course, Beryl got in a high horse. She said, oh, she'd slept like a log and not to talk a lot of twaddle. It's funny, though, isn't it, the way you can't remember your dreams.
May your days be merry and bright,
And may all your Christmases be white.
and after I learned to care a lot, you promised that you'd forget me not, but you forgot.